Hi there. This is an overview video summarizing all information we've gotten about new cast members in House of the Dragon Season 2. Summarizing everything we've heard the past 6 months since filming began back in early April. Now, Season 2 wrapped filming 2 weeks ago, last day of September, and now that the principal photography phase is over, I can look back, do retrospectives, summarizing everything we learned. But originally, I wasn't even going to make a specifically casting overview because, I've already reported on all of it as it came out, more in-depth than I can do succinctly here. On each individual leak, and when I say an individual leak could be about a group of characters, but I have videos on pretty much all of them. But enough people asked that I decided, okay, I'll dash off a quick one as more of a checklist. So this is a checklist of everything we know, everything we don't, really fast. And I had already done this briefly at the end of the last big casting thing we got was the Cregan Stark video. If you remember, I did this quickly at the end of that because I knew, it's a big one, it's the main Stark character, a lot of people would see it. Even then, it wouldn't catch people specifically looking for a video titled Casting Overview. But in the case of the Cregan video, what I would normally do in the full videos I already made, not the checklist, the full ones, for people who didn't read the books, I'd explain this is who this character is, their basic backstory, no spoilers. For, like, Cregan with his uncle, or Jeyne Arryn's backstory with how she rules the Vale in her own right because her father and brothers died. That's book background for the non-readers. And then even for people who read the books, I cover, well, this is who this new actor is. That Tom Taylor is playing Cregan Stark, that he was young Uhtred in the first episode of The Last Kingdom, that when he was a child actor, he briefly played a young Sean Bain in this spy show he was in. The casting directors think he looks like a young Sean Bain, Ned Stark. If I did that here, it would take a full hour, and I'd be repeating myself. I already made these videos. So this is the checklist version summarizing everything we know and everything we don't, and more importantly, what remains. Now, because I'm going for succinctness here, I'm going to start with my conclusions, listing off the 5 big takeaways from this, which are actually the 5 big points that are gaps in our knowledge. We're not sure if that person has been cast yet, or if they have, who's playing them. And some of the other things like Sarah Snow, we have candidates. I don't consider that a gap in our knowledge, but 5 things, and these are in decreasing order of worry. That number 5 is just we're not sure who's been cast in the role. We had blurry spy photos. The first one is the only one that is really a big one of concern, but I'm not that worried. But starting with the elephant in the room, Daeron the Daring. There has been no word on Daeron the Daring casting, and for a time we thought they were finally narrowing down on a candidate or two. For behind-the-scenes leaks I can't talk about publicly, we are starting to reassess that. More importantly, in the wider context of principal photography is finished, we have all the casting leaks we're going to get. In that wider context, we have to consider that we haven't heard a single leak, 0 leaks, for any associated characters to Daeron's Reach storyline. Like, if they really were going to do that in Season 2, you'd expect there to be a Lord Tarly, a Lord Rowan, Lord Caswell. They set up the Caswells in Season 1. We haven't seen anything related to that at all. However, the big point is I'm not worried about that, because I think they just pushed it back to Season 3, that they are going at a much slower pace than we thought they would, which is great. It gives more time for character development. I'm going to talk about this a lot more in my season outline video that's going to immediately follow this, of just what exactly is the end point of Season 2, and it's right that they're going slowly. So I'm not concerned about that. There is a question about, would they introduce Daeron in Season 2 and then have his full story in Season 3? One way or another, his storyline in the Reach, the Battle of the Honeywine, that military campaign, probably Season 3. He may or may not briefly cameo in Season 2 just to set him up. And it doesn't matter if he does, but I said before, I suspect they might want him to show up at the funeral in Episode 3, which is introducing a lot of green characters. We've seen them introducing like Lord Rain, Lord Estermont, that if you were ever going to have him share a scene with Alicent, it would be at that funeral. Because the war's only just started and the roads haven't closed yet. And I've already talked about this in my Daeron video, which I'm probably going to have to take down, but that you could plausibly introduce Daeron and Otto's nephew, the current ruler of House Hightower, Ormond Hightower, could appear at the funeral in episode 3. You would need to have Alicent on screen with Daeron at least once for the sake of a TV-only audience. There's things you can do in a book where you just mention, oh yeah, Daeron was there, but then they sent him to Old Town. It's like going to college. They would need to have him with Alicent at least once. So maybe episode 3, he's not going to have his storyline either way. And they could, mention him in dialogue a lot more. We're pretty sure we had reliable leaks that they were going to mention him in dialogue in season 1. Like just have Aemon talking to Otto about, what about Daeron? Well, his place is in Old Town right now. Something like a throwaway thing to establish there's a 4th kid. But they cut it for, this isn't worth, we'll have a bigger introduction for him later. So I'm not worried about that, but nothing associated with the Reach storyline. Point 2 of 5. There has been no word on casting Jason Lannister's wife, Joanna Westerling Lannister. Joanna with an H. And she might appear in season 2, she might not. If she does, it's a cameo. We know they're setting up other Lannister vassals, like Lord Rain. Lord Lefford was a big one. So he might at least mention her, we're not really sure. While I'm on the subject, we have no idea what Harold Westerling is doing in season 2, because he died in the middle of Viserys' reign in the books. They kept him alive, cast a prominent actor like Graham McTavish. Is he simply going to join Rhaenyra and be a merged, condensed Kingsguard character with some other Kingsguard? I'm not sure, because Harold Westerling, we're pretty sure in the books, he's the uncle of Jason Lannister's wife, Joanna Westerling. We're not really sure what they're doing that. We haven't heard a single leak about Harold. Joanna Westerling Lannister, I made a whole separate video on characters who probably wouldn't come until season 3 anyway. Joanna, I'm on the fence about, that they might mention her, they might even cameo her in season 2, but I doubt it. But we definitely won't see, like, Dalton Greyjoy until season 3 or later, so I wouldn't expect him to be here. So there's some small chance Joanna might briefly appear to set her up, but it's not like we wouldn't really have her storyline kick off yet. Point 3. There has been no specific leak about casting for the Blackwoods. Any of them. I'm not particularly concerned, because there's a lot, for all of these other points, there's a lot of people who are just middle-aged white men who could probably be either a medieval lord or a tavern owner, we don't know, who could be some of these people. Case in point from this list of just the unassigned ones. Every now and again, their casting agency accidentally lists off what their character's name is, so one is credited as Lord Darry, another is Lord Mooton. So it's more of a case of we haven't matched the actors to the characters yet. I mean, also, for women, if it's like a 20-something-year-old female cast member who we know has joined the cast, there's a couple of those. Some are, and many of them will be Tavern Girl number 1 through 3, but one of them will be Allie Blackwood. There's no way of telling. Also, particularly with Ben Blackwood, he'd be an underaged actor. We rarely hear about those in advance. Oscar Tully we learned about through a script thing that was because of Daemon meeting him. You would hear about that, but still the actor, that was a whole complicated thing. I wouldn't expect to hear about everyone, but just luck of the draw, we didn't hear about the Blackwoods yet. And this also applies to point 4 of 5. We have had no specific word on casting for named Vale Lords, particularly Jess Redford. But we know Jeyne Arryn has been cast, and that they're actually expanding the Vale storyline. We had a big leak about this large scene in episode 7 where they have Vale Sherpas, lots of guards, Jeyne Arryn rides out with a dozen Vale Knights. It's just the difference of it would add a little more texture to it. It's more than just the Arryns if you had, like, Corwyn Corbray in the background. That when you sprinkle in vassals, it shows you this is a whole other region of the 7 kingdoms. It's one of the 7 kingdoms. There's vassals in it. Game of Thrones would gloss over that the more you fill it in, the more detailed, the bigger the world is. But it's just a matter of we haven't matched names to actors yet. Jess Redford, it would be so weird if they just mentioned Jess Redford. Must be in it. Might not even be an actor we know of. Might be someone who's been completely secret until now. I don't know, but that's one of the big question marks. Again, I'm not concerned. I'm arguably less concerned about specifically Jess Redford than they might hold off on the Blackwoods until Season 3, or prominently. They'll probably have Jess Redford in Season 2. And point 5 of 5, this isn't even something I'm concerned about, it's just a gap in our knowledge. We haven't confirmed the actor for Nettles, but we know Nettles is in it because we had spy photos of the sowing of the dragon seeds where they're all lined up, all the candidates. And we actually saw not one, but 2 black women in that group. One of them must be Nettles. It's just the photo is so blurry we couldn't assign a name to the face. And whereas I was saying, middle-aged white man, 20-something white woman, there's so many characters like that. When it's a specific race like that, it narrows it down. I've said, we figured out who's probably Marilda of Hull, based on her age and that it's a black woman. If there were any teenage to young 20s, young black women, I would be listing them as candidates, because they don't hire that many of those for this pseudo-medieval England fantasy world, relative to all of the barmaids and stuff, so who knows what they're doing with that, but Nettles is in this season, we just don't know who's playing her. And related to that, we're a little confused about Ulf the White, another Dragon Seed, that at first we thought it was one actor, Leon Ockenden, but now we think it's Tom Bennett. This other actor might be doing it, but it's a case of it's one of 2 candidates. I don't consider 2 or 3 rival candidates to be a gap in knowledge. What I consider gaps in knowledge is we don't even have a lead for Jess Redford, or Aly Blackwood, or Joanna Lannister. But some of these will probably be in Season 2, if not Season 3, because they're going at a slow pace. These are officially the gaps in our knowledge on characters you think would be there or not that we're still waiting on. Daeron might even show up in Episode 3 briefly, but his storyline hasn't started yet. Joanna Lannister might not even show up until Season 3, so it's not really a problem. The Blackwoods we haven't ID'd yet. Jess Redford, no idea, but it would be weird if she wasn't. And Nettles, we had a spy photo, but didn't know who the actress was. So now, having given my 5 main conclusions, the 5 main takeaways right up front, let me just show my homework on this. This is reading down the checklist really fast of everyone who's been cast in Season 2. And these fall into 5 major groupings. Daemon and the Riverlands storyline, like at Harrenhal and the other River Lords. Jace's journey to the Eyrie and Winterfell. The Greens. The Dragon Seeds. And lastly, small folk, mostly presumably from King's Landing, who we found out the character's name from the casting agency website listed playing a farmer or playing Serena. Well, who's that? There isn't a character named that. Is that just a tavern girl or what? Well, technically there's a 6th category of actors who have joined the show, but we don't know is what, that we don't know their names, and most of these probably are commoners. Check out the link to Redanian Intelligence's article to look through all those. I'm not going to bother reading through the last one. This is people who we know the character's name. First grouping, just reading it off fast, Riverlands. Well, the first 2 they actually did confirm when they started filming. They haven't made any confirmation since, maybe because of the strike or something, but they did this in Season 1 too, where even when they were open spy photos of people, they wouldn't admit who they were. And it only came out months later, but that's pretty much what Season 1 did. But start with, in the order we heard this, the only confirmed ones, Gail Rankin as Alys Rivers, the Witch of Harrenhal, officially confirmed by HBO. Also at Harrenhal, Simon Russell Beale, who is a prominent British stage actor, veteran actor, has been officially cast as Sir Simon Strong, Simon playing Simon, who is the old uncle of Lionel. He's the castellan of Harrenhal, that he runs the castle on a day-to-day basis for Larry Clubfoot because he's off in King's Landing. Also, we have Graham McKnight as Paxter Strong, who seems to be a condensation character because there's someone named that in the book. There's many minor Strong cousins. They just condense them into one character for, speaking role purposes. Moving on from that, also in the Riverlands, we have, like I said, Oscar Tully, and I know who's playing him, but I can't tell you because he's underage, but it doesn't matter because he's an unknown. Also, some of these, haphazardly, luck of the draw, the casting agency shared what the character's name is. John Paul Hurley as Lord Darry, and Anna Francolini as Lady Mallister. Anna Francolini's a relatively prominent actress. I mean, she was in HBO's Rome, but okay, she's a Mallister. Just last week, we found out that Turlo Convery is Lord Wallace Mouton. And, well, this isn't quite the Riverlands storyline. This is leaning into the Crownlands storyline, but it wasn't worth making a division for this in my list. That House Mouton rules over Maidenpool, which is the eastern port of the Riverlands on the coast, and he leads his forces to Rook's Rest in the Crownlands, where there's the big battle. So he crosses over into the other storyline, but he's from Maidenpool. And actually, from the Crownlands story, it wasn't worth listing off Black Lords from the Blacks versus the Greens. It made more sense to go Riverlands, Dragon Seeds, and lump this guy in with the other group. Lord Gunthor Darklyn, played by Stephen Pacey. House Darklyn rules over Duskendale, and on their way to Rook's Rest, the Green Army, led by Criston Cole, will sack Duskendale. So he's there, will get killed by Criston Cole. As for the rulers of Rook's Rest itself, House Staunton, Lord Simon Staunton did actually appear at Rhaenyra's War Council in the Season 1 finale, played by actor Michael Elwyn. However, there's been no word on castings for Rosbys or Stokeworths. I mean, they wouldn't be prominent anyway, but I'm not worried because their armies have unique uniforms and heraldry. We've seen from all the spy photos of Rook's Rest that there's levies who are clearly displaying the Rosby red chevron heraldry or the Stokeworth lamb sigil. So they are mentioning the Rosbys and Stokeworths, whether they're characters or not. As for thinking of heraldry, they said there's a big scene of Daemon surveying the armies massing at Harrenhal, and they describe the heraldry of all of them. Would these be speaking roles or not? Hard to say. But the list of heraldry that he sees banners soldiers are carrying includes Blackwood, Bracken, Mallister, Mouton. We have castings for all those. Also Darry. Those are all cast. But Piper and Vance were also in the list of heraldry. We haven't had any castings for those. Well, we haven't had castings for Blackwood and Bracken, but we know they'll probably be there. Will they, bother to make speaking roles for House Vance? I hope they have one, because there's 4 lords who lived through the whole war. Vance is one of them. But they might just be spear carriers without dialogue. If nothing else, they bothered to at least put their heraldry in the crowd shots is nice. But like I said, we haven't heard anything about the Blackwoods casting yet. I'm not concerned. That's Group 1. Group 2, characters in Jace's storyline. Well, first he goes to the Eyrie, and he meets Jeyne Arryn, who is played by Raised by Wolves' Amanda Collin. We haven't heard any other Vale castings yet. I mean, there's this Thomas Jackson's playing a Vale Sherpa, but I already covered this. They'll probably fill that in. The bigger one is then he goes to Winterfell, where we just found out right near the end of filming that Cregan Stark is played by Tom Taylor. And relatively late, we also heard about Sarah Snow used to be a huge question mark. We managed to narrow down to 2 candidates. There's Erica Ford and Raffaella Chapman. And the question is, well, Raffaella is more of that ethereal look, if they're going for a magical waifish thing, but Erica Ford looks more like Maisie Williams. But I lean towards Erica Ford more as the most probable candidate, because she's actually joined the cast. We just don't know as what. Raffaella we just know from Instagram follow, so Erica Ford is in the cast, really looks like Arya. I think she's Sarah Snow. I have a whole video about that. We have not heard any associated northern vassals that, maybe the Winter Wolves are just mentioned but not seen this season. Or they could cut the Manderleys again, which I don't think Ryan Condal would want to cut them. It's annoying how much the other show cut them, that he's the type of guy who would want to put that back in, but other people you'd see around Winterfell, at least. There aren't that many other Starks in this generation, because they had a round of infighting with Cregan's uncle usurped him. as opposed to all the Starks that are in the Game of Thrones. There's really two you need to know, Cregan and Sarah. So we think we narrowed that down. There's also a Stark captain named Tom Lorcan, is the actor's name. Other than that, we don't really know. They've also probably cast like Night's Watch people that we haven't seen yet. That's the second grouping. Third grouping now, just reading down the list. Greens. And like I said, most of these will show up for the funeral in episode 3. Freddie Fox is now playing Alicent's brother, Sir Gawain Hightower. Like he was in season 1, but played by a stuntman wearing a helmet at the tourney. And he'll be pretty prominent this season. She has a brother. We mentioned him pretty prominently. Eddie Eyre has been cast in an unconfirmed role. We did get a spy photo of him wearing the Greens' military uniform with the gold dragon sigil on it. So he's part of their army, but Eddie Eyre played Gerald Hightower in Game of Thrones. But why else would you cast the one Hightower who was on screen? Except is he a new character? Is he Ormond Hightower, Otto's nephew, the head of the family? We don't really know. We know he's at Rook's Rest. We saw him in spy photos there. But why would you go to the trouble of casting this actor? We know he's in it, but we're not quite sure who he's playing. Actor Tom Cott is Kristen Cole's squire in the Rook's Rest storyline. Then there was this trio of actors. I have a whole video devoted to these guys. They're introducing a trio of prominent green lieutenants at the funeral. They're riding right behind Alicent. Well, behind Alicent are the Kingsguard. Behind the Kingsguard are these 3 guys. Each one from a different region the Greens control. Barney Fishwick is Sir Martin Rain. Really hoping they use him prominently as a lieutenant in the Lannister army, the field army from the Westerlands. That House Rain is still alive. They actually never mentioned House Rain in season 1. I mean, they didn't need to. And you have Ralph Davis as Leon Estermont, who is from the Stormlands. It's an invented character, but okay, they're Greens. And Tox Stephen, whose character is listed as Eddard Waters. That's apparently a condensation character that means he's a bastard from the Crownlands. And I'm wondering, did they condense that there were some Valyrians that they're actually like half a dozen younger cousins who protested the succession, who they condensed into TV Vaemond. Vaemond in the books is Corlys's nephew, that they just made him his younger brother. But there's half a dozen younger cousins, younger nephews, and they end up fighting for the Greens. So I think, is Eddard Waters supposed to be Vaemond's son, or is he perhaps a TV version of Marston Waters, or who becomes a Kingsguard, or possibly both? I'm leaning more towards just Vaemond's son. We'll see what happens. Then we have, and just recently, Vincent Regan, who was, you'll remember from 300, he was in Troy. He was cast as a Kingsguard, but we don't know his name yet. He's one of the new Kingsguard that they had to promote up to get 7 again, because each side they split in half. So he has to make new ones. Each side, for Rhaenyra's Queensguard, they promote up some people. Aegon promotes up some people. Moving down the list to other vassals, though, you have Daniel Fathers as Lord Humphrey Lefford, who is an important character, and more importantly, we found out what episodes he's in late in the season. Ties in with Lannister army movements when they get to Golden Tooth, when they enter the Riverlands. Talking about more in the outline video for the season outline. That's actually really important, that Lefford is there. He might even show up for the funeral, he might not. But like if Lord Rain is there, logically maybe the Leffords are there too. Also, some casting for the Triarchy. I don't think the Battle of the Gullet is in Season 2, despite what the clickbaiters keep hyping up. But they are setting up that that's in motion, that we will see Tyrosh. We will see Bill Best as a Tyroshi pirate, Milos Bindus as a Triarchy pirate, but we saw them building a Tyrosh set, that they're going to treat with them to go, your fleet attack the Valyrian fleet, they're your enemies, they're our enemies. We'll see what happens with that. So they're at least setting that up, but I don't think it happens this season. So those are characters from the Green set that are this season. Dragon Seeds, I already covered. I have a whole specific video on the Dragon Seeds because it was one big set of spy photos, that Kieran Boo is blatantly playing Hugh Hammer. The one question we have, I said with Ulf the White, is we used to think it was Leon Ockenden, now we think it's Tom Bennett, and we're not really sure. Abu Bakr Salim was actually confirmed. He was announced as Alan of Hull. He was father on Raised by Wolves. And Clinton Liberty is Adam of Hull. We confirmed that from other leaks. He is Adam of Hull. He will be getting Sea Smoke and everything. That's fine. And I have a separate video on that. We think we figured out that Martina Laird is playing their mother, Marilda of Hull, of the two boys. And there's a couple of, like a couple of dozen people die in the sowing of the dragon seeds, failing to claim dragons. Only 4 succeed. So there's some other candidates that fail, like Pablo Larocque is a dragon seed, probably dies. Robert Rhodes is Silver Dennis, who gets killed. Because even the ones that blatantly look like Targaryen bastards, sometimes the dragons just reject them. And like I said, we have spy photos of Nettles, but they're from a distance, and we can't tell who the actress is. And then, last and my least favorite category, assorted small folk that we can't identify too well from the names. Well, the first one's actually we can. Blood and Cheese. And we've known this for months. This was one of the earlier leaks, that Sam C. Wilson is Blood, Mark Stobart is Cheese. And Scroobius Pip, that's a stage name, is the funeral procession herald. You see him in the spy videos shouting, "Behold the work of Rhaenyra the Cruel." But we knew all of that pretty far in advance. These other ones, though, I'm not really sure. That, like, Nicola Wright is playing a, quote, rat catcher woman, that they execute the rat catchers in the city after that. That might be part of that. Then you have this actor called James Dougherty playing Clay. That might be a code name. Graham Dawling as a Shipbreaker Bay fisherman. And Samson Kao is apparently another fisherman in Clay's storyline, that characters sneak into King's Landing or Dragonstone using fisherman boats and hitching a ride. Samson Kao was a co-star on Truth Seekers. Emma Darcy's old show, Truth Seekers, that they were co-stars. They had a lot of scenes together. They were the primary couple on there. So it'll be nice to see them interacting with KO again. I don't know if they'd have scenes in the shared scenes, but they'd be at the parties and stuff that they included Samson there. It's nice. As for these other ones, though, the first time we're seeing a Dornish person, there's Dritten Castrati as a, quote, Dornish merchant. Now, it mentions because of the blockade, merchants keep yelling at petitioning the royal court, "Hey, they're keeping all my ships from getting here. What are you doing?" Could it be just a random Dornishman in a tavern getting drunk? Could it be a Dornishman complaining at the Red Keep? We don't know, but it's odd. Oh, there's a Dornishman there? Why? And, like, another big one who's actually an actress of note is Laura Torchia. But, South Asian actress, I can't tell. Are you playing, like, a brothel person or a barmaid or actually, like, a triarchy person? Or what are you playing? And another one we couldn't tell, that seemed like it's a relatively new actress, Parker LePaine, but she doesn't have any credits to her name. I don't know if she's actually a big role or not. We'd have to see, like, could she be Jess Redford? Could she be any one of a dozen other characters? We don't know. And the last one that really bothers me is just Sarah Woodard as, quote, Lady Serena. That she's an older, 50s-ish actress, well experienced with a long resume. And why would you call it Lady Serena? There is no character named Serena in the book. Like, is this a prominent, recurring brothel madam? I keep saying brothels and taverns. What else is in a medieval city in an RPG or something? So we know there's this recurring location in Season 2 in Flea Bottom, this dive called the Cock's Inn, because there's a rooster engraving on the front. There's this rooster statue, so it's the Cock Inn, because a rooster's cockfight. Yeah, so the small folk in their humor, but there's going to be quite a few, like, barmaids and drunks and stuff when we're going through casting lists at that. Speaking of which, this is a recurring character. Diana, the handmaid that Aegon assaulted, played by Maddie Evans, will actually return, and she's in like 3 or 4 episodes throughout the season. And in episodes like 3 and 5 and 1 that prominently feature King's Landing scenes. So I don't think she left the city, but, like, maybe she fled the Red Keep to work at this tavern or something. I don't know. And why are they keeping her? Will she end up doing something? We're not really sure. That's a returning character. This is basically everyone. That Lady Serena thing of my suspicion is Serena owns the Cox Inn and that Diana is a barmaid there now or something. But there's not much else you can tell when you get down to the level of commoners in King's Landing. They haven't cast the shepherd yet, the street preacher who's a rabble rouser. I made a whole video about I hope they cast Ron Perlman as the shepherd. That's my dream casting. It's not going to happen though. So go to, at the end of this, the description box below. It has links to my long-form reports on each casting group as we learned about them over the past 6 months, with actual photos and in-depth discussion of each individual actor's resumes and stuff. And visit the link to Redanian Intelligence's really thorough checklist, where they even list off people who don't have character names assigned to them yet, who could be Lord Blackwood for all I know, but there's no real way of guessing. So I tried to keep this as succinct as possible, haha, like 30 to 40 minutes, but keep in mind, this is 6 months worth of stuff, and I didn't keep you in suspense. I told you in advance these are the gaps in our knowledge of who's been cast and who hasn't. 4 out of 5 of those were just luck of the draw. We didn't find out who's playing Jess Redfort yet, or Nettles. The only one of concern is what's going on with Daeron and the Reach. I think it got moved to Season 3, and I don't have a problem with that. When you cross-reference with how fast they're going, they're really going pretty slowly and methodically through this. They're expanding the story. That people got worried when they went, oh, it's an 8-episode season instead of 10. I think the plan was always what was 10 episodes got expanded into 16, then split into 2 batches of 8. Is what I think for Act 2 of a 3-act story, well, whatever they're doing. So, gonna cut it off here. Check out all of those if you haven't seen them yet. And then next, right after this, is my big summary video going episode by episode, the story outline of Season 2. As best we can discern, backed up by leak evidence. Things we can confirm, not just hearsay, but script leaks, casting leaks, and spy photos. What can we confirm is in Season 2, episode by episode?